When a brilliant junior employee, Nick, has his groundbreaking idea stolen by his charming but ruthless boss, Andrew, he's left humiliated and powerless. Determined to take back what's his, Nick embarks on a calculated plan of revenge, uncovering Andrew's dark secrets and orchestrating his downfall. But just as Nick reclaims his stolen success and rises to the top, a shocking twist flips the tables. Andrew resurfaces with damning evidence of Nick's own questionable actions, exposing a scandal that threatens to destroy everything. In a high-stakes game of betrayal and retribution, Nick learns the hard way that revenge always comes with a price. I never thought the day I trusted someone with my dreams would be the day my life unraveled. My name is Nick, and a few years ago, I was just another overworked, underappreciated cog in the corporate machine. I worked as a junior marketing analyst for a mid-sized tech company, spending my days crunching numbers and my nights dreaming of making a real impact. Back then, I believed hard work and creativity would eventually get me noticed. What I didn't know was that in the cutthroat corporate world, talent means nothing if someone more powerful decides they want what you have. Andrew was my boss. He was everything I wasn't: charismatic, confident, and effortlessly polished. Everyone loved Andrew. He could walk into a room and have executives eating out of his hand within minutes. People like him don't need talent, they have charm, and in our company, that was all you needed to climb the ladder. But Andrew wasn't just charming. He was also ruthless. Stories swirled about how he borrowed ideas from his team and presented them as his own, but he was so smooth about it that no one ever dared call him out. I didn't think it would happen to me. I was naive. For months, I'd been working on an idea that consumed me. It was a social media integration tool designed to help businesses connect with their customers in real time. Not only was it innovative, but it had the potential to generate massive revenue. I had spent countless sleepless nights developing the concept, coding basic prototypes, and researching the market. It wasn't just work to me, it was my passion project, the kind of idea that could define a career. I guarded it like a secret, until Andrew noticed. At first, it was flattering. Andrew started dropping by my cubicle more often, asking casual questions about what I was working on. He'd nod thoughtfully, his gaze lingering on my screens as I showed him snippets of code or mock-ups. Then he started asking more specific questions, probing deeper into the concept. I should have been suspicious, but I mistook his interest for mentorship. When he suggested we pitch the idea together to the executives, I felt like I had hit the jackpot. Andrew's support meant the project had a real shot. "Nick," he said one afternoon, leaning against the edge of my desk with his trademark easy grin. "This is brilliant. Seriously. The higher-ups need to see this. Let's put together a killer presentation, and I'll make sure it gets in front of the right people." I was elated. Andrew was offering to champion my idea, to give it the platform it deserved. In my excitement, I didn't think twice about handing over everything I had: market data, design mock-ups, coding frameworks, even the detailed business plan I'd drafted. I trusted him. That was my first mistake. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing the pitch. Well, I prepared it. Andrew mostly provided vague feedback and practiced his delivery. I didn't mind. After all, he was the one with the connections and the experience. I told myself this was how the system worked: junior employees like me needed senior leaders like Andrew to break through the noise. The day of the presentation arrived, and I was so nervous I could barely sit still. I'd worked so hard for this moment. As the executives filed into the conference room, I felt a mix of excitement and terror. This was it. My big break. Andrew started the presentation with his usual charm, cracking a few jokes to warm up the room. Then he launched into the pitch. At first, I was too nervous to notice the subtle shifts in his phrasing. But as he continued, a sickening realization began to sink in. "Ladies and gentlemen," Andrew said, gesturing to the slides I had painstakingly created, "I'm excited to share an idea I've been developing for months." I've been developing. My stomach twisted. He wasn't just pitching my idea, he was taking credit for it. Completely. As Andrew spoke, weaving my hard work into a narrative that centered entirely on himself, I sat frozen in my chair. He didn't mention my name once, not even in passing. By the time he wrapped up, the room was buzzing with enthusiasm. Executives were nodding, throwing around phrases like game changer and the future of our company. I felt like I was watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. When the meeting ended, the executives crowded around Andrew, congratulating him and peppering him with questions about his brilliant idea. No one even glanced in my direction. I was invisible. I waited until the room emptied before confronting him. My voice shook with anger as I cornered him in the hallway. Andrew, what the hell was that? You didn't even mention me. This was my idea. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he sighed, like he was dealing with an overly emotional child. Relax, Nick. This is how the game is played. You're young, you'll have plenty of ideas. Let this one go. Let it go. Was he serious? I stared at him, struggling to find the words. He clapped me on the shoulder with that same infuriating grin. Look, you're still part of the team. I'll make sure you get some credit when this thing takes off. But trust me, this is bigger than you. You should be proud. Proud? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The anger burned hot in my chest, but beneath it was something colder, humiliation. Andrew didn't see me as a threat. To him, I was just another disposable cog. He had stolen my work, my dream, and he thought he could get away with it because I was powerless to stop him. For a while, it felt like he was right. I tried going to HR, but they brushed me off. Andrew was a star at the company, and I was just a junior employee with no real influence. I even considered suing him, but I didn't have the money or resources to take on someone like him. Every avenue I explored ended in a dead end. I spiraled. I stopped sleeping, replaying the betrayal over and over in my mind. Every time I saw Andrew in the office, basking in the glory of my idea, the anger and frustration threatened to consume me. But eventually, the anger turned into something sharper, something focused. If I couldn't beat Andrew the conventional way, I'd have to outsmart him. I didn't know how yet, but I made a decision: I wasn't going to let him get away with this. One way or another, I was going to take back what was mine. Andrew didn't see it coming. He thought I'd tuck my tail between my legs and let him enjoy the spoils of my hard work. That was his mistake. For weeks after the presentation, I played the role of the defeated, dutiful employee. I kept my head down, avoided confrontations, and did whatever tasks were thrown my way without complaint. I needed him to think I had given up because I was planning something far more destructive than a heated argument in the hallway. I knew that if I wanted to take Andrew down, I couldn't act impulsively. He was too smart and too powerful to be caught off guard by something sloppy. I had to be patient, methodical. I had to build a plan that would dismantle him piece by piece. The first step was gathering information. Andrew wasn't just a thief, he was arrogant. And arrogance leads to mistakes. I started paying close attention to everything he said and did, both in and out of the office. When he went out for drinks with executives, I, coincidentally, ended up at the same bar. When he was deep in conversation with someone in the office kitchen, I lingered nearby, pretending to make coffee. It didn't take long to figure out that Andrew's perfect exterior was just a mask. Beneath it, he was sloppy, careless, even. One of the first cracks I noticed was in his financials. Andrew lived like a man who made twice his salary. He drove a brand new sports car, wore designer suits, and dropped money on lavish dinners and expensive gadgets like it was pocket change. I knew for a fact that his company paycheck couldn't support that lifestyle, which meant the money had to be coming from somewhere else. But where? That's when I started looking into the company's finances. I didn't have direct access to sensitive information, but I worked in marketing, which meant I occasionally dealt with budget reports. I began studying those reports more closely, looking for discrepancies. It was subtle at first, small amounts of money allocated to vague, miscellaneous expenses. But as I dug deeper, a pattern started to emerge. Andrew had been skimming money off the department's budget, funneling it into dummy accounts under fake vendor names. It was clever, but not clever enough. I didn't take the evidence to HR right away. I wanted more. Andrew's financial missteps were just the tip of the iceberg. If I wanted to bring him down for good, I needed something bigger, something that couldn't be explained away with a charming smile and a half-hearted apology. Next, I started digging into his communications. Andrew had a habit of emailing himself sensitive company data, which was strictly against policy. I discovered this one night when I was working late and noticed he had left his office door slightly ajar. His computer was on, the screen glowing faintly in the dark. It was risky, but I couldn't resist. I slipped inside, quickly navigating to his email account. Sure enough, there were dozens of emails sent to his personal address, many of them containing confidential information about the company's upcoming projects, including mine. I copied everything onto a flash drive and slipped back out before anyone could notice. My hands were shaking the whole time, but the adrenaline kept me steady. When I got home that night, I combed through the files. Some of it was mundane, status updates, client correspondence, but a few emails caught my attention. They were correspondence with outside companies, discussing potential partnerships and deals. The problem? These were competitors, companies our firm considered rivals. Andrew wasn't just stealing from me, he was playing both sides. I finally had enough to destroy him. The evidence of embezzlement, policy violations, and unethical dealings painted a clear picture of a man who cared about no one but himself. But even with everything I had, I knew I couldn't rush. Andrew had friends in high places. If I tipped my hand too early, he'd find a way to spin the situation in his favor. I needed to time my moves perfectly. While I waited for the right moment, I decided to strike a preemptive blow. I had been reaching out to contacts at competing firms under an anonymous alias, dropping hints about Andrew's shady dealings. I provided just enough detail to pique their interest without giving away my identity. One of those firms was particularly eager to hear more. They had been working on a product similar to the social media tool Andrew had stolen from me, and they were desperate for a competitive edge. I leaked just enough information to ensure they would beat Andrew to market. It wasn't hard, the tool was still in development at our company, and Andrew had been dragging his feet, assuming he had no competition. When the competitor announced their product, a fully functional tool that looked suspiciously similar to mine, it sent shockwaves through our company. "What the hell happened?" one of the executives shouted during a heated meeting. "How did they beat us to this? This was supposed to be our game changer." Andrew was flustered, fumbling through excuses about development delays and unforeseen complications. I sat quietly in the corner, hiding my smirk behind a neutral expression. Watching him squirm was the most satisfying moment I'd had in months. The executives weren't happy, but Andrew still had enough goodwill to avoid immediate consequences. That was fine by me. I wasn't finished yet. Over the next few weeks, I carefully prepared the final stage of my plan. I compiled all the evidence I had gathered, financial records, emails, leaked communications with competitors, into a single, damning file. Then I drafted an anonymous letter and sent it directly to the CEO. I made sure to include specific details that would make it impossible to ignore. When the investigation began, Andrew didn't even realize he was under scrutiny. I watched from the sidelines as the walls slowly closed in around him. First, the auditors uncovered the missing funds. Then, the IT department flagged his unauthorized email activity. Finally, the executives started asking questions about his connections to rival firms. By the time Andrew realized what was happening, it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and no amount of charm could save him. The company fired him in disgrace, and I heard rumors they were planning to sue him for damages. Watching him pack up his office and walk out the door for the last time was a moment I'll never forget. But even as I savored my victory, I knew I wasn't done. Andrew might have been out of the picture, but my fight wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine. I wasn't going to stop until my idea, my dream, was back in my hands. With Andrew gone, the office felt lighter. People whispered about his sudden fall from grace, trading rumors and speculations like they were sharing secrets over campfires. Some said he'd been stealing money for years, others claimed he'd been caught selling company secrets to competitors. No one really knew the full story except me, and I wasn't about to correct them. Let them think what they wanted. I had bigger things to focus on. Andrew's departure created a power vacuum in the company. His sudden exit left a gaping hole in leadership, especially since his fall had delayed the development of my social media tool. The executives were scrambling to reorganize, and while they were distracted, I saw my chance to take control of my narrative. It wasn't going to be easy. Andrew may have been a thief, but he was also a skilled manipulator. Even after his disgrace, there was still a lingering belief among the higher-ups that the social media tool had been his idea. If I wanted to reclaim what was mine, I needed to prove not only that the idea was mine, but that I was the only person capable of making it a reality. I started by working late, later than I ever had before. While others went home at 6, I stayed behind, combing through the project's files, refining the prototype, and creating a new and improved pitch. I didn't sleep much during those weeks, but I didn't care. Every late night, every extra hour, was a step closer to taking back what Andrew had stolen from me. My first hurdle came in the form of Mark, one of the senior managers who had been assigned to oversee the fallout from Andrew's departure. Mark was everything Andrew wasn't: quiet, methodical, and by the book. He wasn't the kind of guy you could charm or manipulate, which meant I had to rely on cold, hard results to win him over. One afternoon, I caught him on his way out of a meeting and asked if I could have a few minutes of his time. He gave me a skeptical look but nodded. "Look, no, the social media tool has been delayed because of, well, everything," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But I've been working on some improvements to the original concept, and I think it's worth revisiting." Mark crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "You've been working on it?" "I thought that was Andrew's project." "It was Andrew's project," I said, forcing myself to stay calm. "But the original idea was mine. I developed the concept months before he ever got involved. I didn't have the chance to prove it before everything went sideways." Mark raised an eyebrow. "And you have proof of this?" "I do," I said, pulling out a folder I'd prepared. Inside were time-stamped emails, sketches, and early drafts of the project, everything I'd created before Andrew swooped in and took over. Mark flipped through the pages, his expression softening slightly as he took it all in. "All right," he said finally. "Put together a formal pitch. I'll see what I can do." That was all I needed. For the next week, I threw everything I had into preparing the presentation. This time, I wasn't going to let anyone else take the spotlight. The day of the pitch arrived, and I stood at the front of the conference room, staring out at a table full of executives. Mark sat near the middle, nodding at me encouragingly. I took a deep breath and began. "Thank you all for being here," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling in my chest. "Today, I want to reintroduce you to a project that has the potential to transform how we approach social media integration. But before I dive into the details, I want to be clear, this project is my passion. I developed the concept from the ground up, and I've spent months refining it into something I truly believe will set our company apart." I could see a few skeptical faces around the table, but I pressed on. I walked them through the data, the prototypes, the market research. I answered every question they threw at me, backing up my claims with hard evidence. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Then, Mark spoke up. "It's clear you've put a lot of thought into this," he said. "And I have to say, the improvements you've made since the initial pitch are impressive." I felt a surge of relief, but I didn't let it show. This was just the beginning. The executives deliberated for what felt like an eternity before finally making their decision. When they called me back into the room, the CEO smiled at me. "We're greenlighting the project," she said. "And we'd like you to lead it." Hearing those words was like finally coming up for air after being underwater for too long. I had done it. After everything Andrew had stolen from me, after months of anger and frustration, I was finally getting what I deserved. But the victory was bittersweet. While I was thrilled to have reclaimed my idea, I couldn't forget the cost of getting here. The sleepless nights, the humiliation, the constant pressure to prove myself, it had all taken a toll. I had won, yes, but at what price? Still, as I sat in my new office, my own office, staring at the project plan spread out on my desk, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. For the first time in months, I was in control. The project was mine again, and I was determined to make it a success. But even as I celebrated, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that Andrew wasn't finished. He had been too quiet since his departure, and I knew someone like him wouldn't go down without a fight. I had won this battle, but I couldn't let my guard down. Not yet. With the social media integration tool officially greenlit and under my leadership, I threw myself into the work like my life depended on it. My days were consumed by team meetings, prototype testing, and preparing for the product launch. The company had high expectations for me, and I wasn't going to let them down. This wasn't just about success anymore, it was about redemption. About proving to myself, and to everyone else, that I deserved to be here. The months flew by, and before I knew it, launch day was upon us. The tool, now called Social Link, was everything I had dreamed it would be. The early press coverage was glowing, and the pre-orders were off the charts. I should have been ecstatic, but something felt off. A nagging sense of unease had been creeping up on me ever since the launch announcement. It started with anonymous emails, short, cryptic messages sent to my work account. "You can't escape the truth. We both know what really happened. Enjoy your success while it lasts." At first, I brushed them off as spam. But as the launch grew closer, the messages became more frequent, and more pointed. One in particular made my blood run cold. "You took Andrew down, but did you think he'd stay down? Watch your back." I hadn't heard a word about Andrew since he'd been fired. The lawsuit against him was still dragging its way through the courts, and last I'd heard, he'd declared bankruptcy. As far as I was concerned, he was finished. But this email made me wonder. Had I underestimated him? Was he planning something? I tried to focus on the launch, but the paranoia was impossible to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go horribly wrong. And then it did. The launch event was a massive success. Executives, clients, and journalists packed into the company auditorium as I took the stage to showcase Social Link. I was in my element, walking them through the tool's features and demonstrating its capabilities. The applause was thunderous, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on top of the world. But my victory was short-lived. Just as the event was wrapping up, the giant screen behind me flickered. At first, I thought it was a technical glitch, but then an all-too-familiar face appeared on the screen. Andrew. The room fell silent. My heart stopped. He was sitting in what looked like a dingy apartment, a smug smile plastered across his face. "Hello, everyone," Andrew said, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "I hope you're all enjoying Nick's big day. He's done an impressive job, hasn't he? Taking what isn't his and passing it off as his own. A real prodigy." The audience gasped. My blood turned to ice. "Let me tell you a little story," Andrew continued, leaning closer to the camera. About a junior analyst who had big dreams and wasn't afraid to lie, cheat, and steal to make them come true. Sounds inspiring, doesn't it? Except the part where he framed his boss to get there. The color drained from my face. I looked around the room, trying to gauge the reaction, but everyone's eyes were glued to the screen. Andrew smirked. Nick here likes to play the victim, but let's set the record straight. Yes, I took credit for his idea. And yes, that was wrong. But what Nick didn't tell you is that he didn't just take me down, he destroyed me. And to do it, he broke the law. Multiple laws, in fact. Don't believe me? Let me show you. The screen changed, and suddenly, my worst fears were staring back at me. There were emails, my emails, sent to competitors, leaking details about the project. Copies of the files I'd stolen from Andrew's computer. Financial records showing how I'd manipulated the company's budget to sabotage Andrew's efforts. It was all there. Everything I thought I'd covered my tracks on. The audience erupted into whispers. Executives exchanged shocked glances. I could feel their eyes boring into me, their trust unraveling in real time. This is only the beginning, Andrew said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. By the time I'm done, everyone will know exactly who Nick is. A fraud. A thief. A hypocrite. Enjoy the spotlight, Nick. It won't last. The screen went black. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then, chaos erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Executives demanded explanations. My team looked at me, wide-eyed and horrified. My carefully constructed world was collapsing around me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I was summoned to a board meeting that same afternoon. The CEO, who had once praised me for my hard work and innovation, now looked at me like I was a stranger. Nick, she said, her voice cold and measured. We need the truth. Did you leak company information to competitors? Did you tamper with the project's finances to sabotage Andrew? I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. The evidence Andrew had shown was damning, and I knew there was no point in lying. Slowly, I nodded. Yes, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But. No buts, she interrupted. You've put this company at risk. Your actions have jeopardized everything we've worked for. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Just like that, it was over. I packed up my office in a daze, the whispers of my former colleagues following me as I walked out of the building for the last time. I spent the next few weeks holed up in my apartment, replaying everything in my mind. I had won the battle against Andrew, but he'd won the war. He had waited in the shadows, gathering evidence, biding his time, and striking when it would hurt the most. The scandal spread quickly. News outlets picked up the story, painting me as the villain. The competitor I had leaked to came forward, adding fuel to the fire. Lawsuits followed, and with no job and no allies left, I couldn't afford to fight them. I had set out to destroy Andrew, and in the process, I'd destroyed myself. Months later, I saw Andrew again. It was in the news. He had started his own consulting firm, using the money he'd won from his countersuit against me. He was rebuilding his life, piece by piece, while I was stuck at square one. Revenge, I realized too late, was a double-edged sword. And I had cut myself deeper than I ever could have imagined.